Good afternoon. I'm Jonathan Bailey Holland, board member of the American Composers Orchestra, and I would like to welcome you to today's Composer to Composer talk. Before we begin, I would like to take the opportunity to thank a number of people who have made today's event possible. First, I would like to thank both Gabriela Lena Frank and William Bolcom for agreeing to be our featured composer for today's event. I'd also like to thank fellow composer and ACO's artistic director, Derek Bermel, for hosting. I would like to give a huge thank you to the ACO staff for their tireless work behind the scenes to make this and all of the events like these possible, as well as my colleagues on the board. I would also like to thank Christina Jensen and Jensen Artists for producing today's event, which is being streamed both on YouTube and Facebook. Finally, I would like to acknowledge and thank the Oral History of American Music Collection at Yale University for partnering with the ACO to archive these unique and important public conversations in their collection. It's now my pleasure to hand things over to our host for today's conversation, Derek Bermel. Oh, I think you're muted, Derek. It wouldn't be an online event if somebody wasn't muted.
Rookie mistake, as Gabriela just said. Thanks so much, Jonathan, and thanks for being here to introduce this really exciting talk today, which is with two of my favorite people, William Bolcom and Gabriela Lena Frank, who are colleagues and wonderful composers and musicians. I wanted to encourage all of you in the audience. We're really happy that you're all here, but please leave your questions. Leave your questions in the comment section, or if you have anything to say, if you want to know anything about the music that you're listening to, we will answer them. We'll try to get around to answering them through the day and during the conversation. So and let us know where you're tuning in from, because we'd love to know who's on the call. We wonder if we're going to have lots of people from Michigan, for example, since not only Gabriela, but I am a graduate of the University of Michigan, where we both studied with William Bolcom. And so today we're going to hear, and we're going to be listening to excerpts from two works, one of them being William Bolcom's Ninth Symphony. Now, many of you know William Bolcom. He is a Pulitzer Prize winning composer. He is a Grammy winning composer. And his work has really just run the gamut of so many different styles from all over the globe. And although he's been called an eclectic, I don't even think that captures his broad knowledge of the repertoire and real depth as a musician. So whatever you want to call him, he's one of our great living composers, and we're so happy to welcome him here. And Gabriela Lena Frank, we're going to hear her the Walkabout Concerto, which I believe was written for the Detroit Symphony, conducted by Leonard Slatkin. And Gabriela not only is the current composer in residence with the Philadelphia Orchestra, she's just won the very prestigious Heinz Award for not the Ketchup, but it is the Ketchup Company that gives out this award to outstanding artists in the field. And but she's also been awarded the Guggenheim, many other prizes, and she's a native of Berkeley, California. And as I mentioned, she also studied with Bill Bolcom. So we're going to explore a little bit their relationship as people and as musicians today. And so I'd like to welcome them both here. And I know that they are virtually backstage to join us. Hello, Gabriela, and hello, Bill.
What a pleasure.
It's so good to be here.
Here, wherever here is, right? Here, there.
Everywhere now. I mean, this is a strange thing. We are in an electronic universe which doesn't let us have any single poem anymore. There is no place, there is no thing. You know, there's no there, as that famous person talked.
That was Gertrude Stein, I think.
No, we don't have any there at all. It's just it's everywhere or nowhere. It's very weird.
Well,
But I have to say, Bill, I recognize your studio. I'm glad to see all the music on the table, and you might recognize my kitchen. You've been in my kitchen here before.
Sure. They're very well fit. Thank you. Oh my Lord, yes. I love their place. Have you been out there, Derek?
oh, I haven't been there yet. No, I have not been out to visit yet. But I know we've got West Coast, East Coast, and Midwest covered here, right here, just between the three of us.
You know, one of the things about the American Academy of Arts and Leicester, they have been very dilatory about taking anybody west of the Mississippi. It's so ridiculous. It's so New York oriented. We have to do something about that.
Well,
I won't do
well, maybe they'll take Gabriela's studio and remake it, just as they've done with Ives in some different place. But in any case, we're going to actually start off by talking about Gabriela's piece, the Walkabout Concerto, and then we're going to get into your Ninth Symphony, and maybe we could just have Gabby. Do you want to start off talking about the work and say something a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, if I were to put it in context, I would have to put it in context of my longtime relationship with Bill, because I started to orchestrate. My very first step, Bill, in orchestrating was with you. I don't know if how well you remember this, but I'd already known you because we my first semester at Michigan. So this would have been in fall of '96. I'm really dating myself here. Fall of '96. And I was in awe of you. I mean, you were the great Bill Bolcom. I wasn't yet in your studio. And then all of us that came in that first year, it was a really large class at Michigan. We were just thrown into your words of music class, which is like trial by fire. For those of you that don't know, this is an infamous course because it's so much work, but you learn so much. And all the private teachers, each composer that's in this class, they know that every week in a private lessons, you're going to see something for Bill's class, homework for Bill's class. And maybe, Bill, do you want to talk a little bit about the class?
It was the idea of my friend Richard Tillinghast, the poet, and me. The idea was we were going to get, I wish I'd been able to have undergraduates into it too, but Richard said that the English department said it ought to be grads. I wanted to have a situation which is essentially creating a climate between working young poets and working young composers. And so they should learn to work together. It was very important to have people who could actually perform what's been done. And I remember talking to the voice department, and the gentleman who was there, he said, "Oh, we can't do that." So I called this rather irascible fellow who's also the what he renamed accompanying to piano, collaborative piano, and his name is Martin Katz, and he was famous for being very irascible. But I asked him, "Can you help me?" He did. He brought me all kinds of pianists, all kinds of young singers who were delighted at the idea of being able to be the first to sing something, whatever it might have been, that might have going to come out of the class. And that was the whole excitement. I don't know, something in the front, somebody's calling our front row. Joan will take care of it.
I thought that was an example of what you were supposed to sing.
Oh, no. I mean, that's not my idea. That's electronic stupid. So anyway, but back where we were, the whole idea was how do you work with a voice and a real actual performer and a pianist? So Martin very kindly found the pianist, and we made a little kind of campaign. Nobody got paid, but they were all they became groupies. They were there because they wanted to be there. And the ones who were not even going to be singing something were there because they wanted to hear the new thing right away. It was quite exciting. And we did that really quite a number of weeks. You remember, I'm sure. And it was quite a wonderful experience of just what it was to pull together. And then we put together this little place called the Carytown Concert House, which is a kind of a little municipal. We sort of helped it. It had been a flop house, which had been converted into an L-shaped concert hall. And 150 people could sit there. And we would have them all come out there and find all these songs with the performers would get together at the end of the semester and do a little recital of whatever it was. And it was quite exciting for everybody. And I loved the whole thing of making it, keeping going. And some of the collaborations that came out of that particular course continued afterwards, which made me very excited. But the whole idea was, how do you interact? How do you find yourself? And the other part is the third part of the circle. Yo-Yo Ma has a wonderful, there's a piece, there's the performance, and the audience. If you look at that as a big circle of a kind of electronic circle that like that, the idea is they all feed each other all the time. We need all of those elements to be able to make it work. So here you write the piece, you present this to the person you want to have it perform, and you want to have those people out there too, and all of this together makes the piece. So that's really what we worked out as a kind of modus operandi, and it worked very well. I think we did 5 or 6 times we did that, and that was always great fun, and it was always wonderful because I don't know how much of any of that will become part of their repertory of their lives, but the point was, the idea is interacting. The idea is realizing that your performers are your collaborators. They are not just somebody who's going to be playing and singing whatever you're giving them to do. They are there, and they are also encouraged to let you know, this works well and this I don't like so well. And so they begin to learn how it is. It's a collaboration. The whole excitement is the collaboration to me. I can propose, and I ask people to dispose, but I'm in on it is the same way as they are, and I am not an autocrat. And the whole idea is, it's so much more fun if you have a good time letting it be end up with something, right?
I think what maybe some people may not know about how composers are trained in the school is that we do get weekly lessons like instrumentalists, but for a very long time, you never hear the music come to life. It would be like a violinist going in for a lesson with their violin teacher, and they put their instruments down on the table, and they don't ever touch the violin during the lesson. They just talk about how they're going to play this passage in tune, and they're going to shift to this string, and they're going to add vibrato here. And then the teacher says, okay, go away and do that. And a composition lesson, because the performers are not there, you don't hear it come to life. So it's actually pretty rare that a student composer hears something come to life. And so this Words of Music class for me was how I knew you. I knew you as somebody that was bringing music to life. It was part of how you taught, and it was a masterclass in teaching composition. And now I've started a small academy here, and it's the same thing. It's all about getting readings and then working on it together and building the relationships that, like with this Words of Music class, endure. That's my signal this time. So I knew you first through that class, and I remember as part of that class, you and Joan hosted a bunch of us for dinner at your house, and it was one of my earliest experiences where the teacher was real, like they went shopping. You know how strange it is when you're young and you see your teacher actually in the grocery store getting milk or getting eggs, and that they have this complete life. And then it was almost overwhelming. Yeah, it was almost overwhelming to come to your home for the first time. And then I studied with you, and I was delighted that you would take me on, in your studio. But I don't know if you knew this, but I used to always grab the lesson time that was either right before lunch or after lunch. And I did that because I would either bring some food, or we would go to Everest with Chinese, or we would go to Carytown, because then I would get 2 hours of you every week. And
I was actually complicit in that whole thing, so you know that.
And it was strategic.
You a number on me. I knew what you're doing.
This is great. By the way, I wanted to say that we have so many folks who are signing in, just dozens and dozens of people telling us where they're signing in from, and I wanted to encourage everybody to let us know. And I noticed lots and lots of composers, everyone from Margaret Brower and Eric Santos in Ann Arbor, April Tucker, and Lainey in Princeton, Lainey here in Brooklyn, and Kirsten Volness, and Tim Peterson, Brian Neighbors, Stacy Garrett, David Schober, Graham Haynes all the way in Bahia. So there's lots of folks here, as well as
Nice.
ACO, our contractor John Taylor, and some supporters like Augusta Gross, who's on our board, Eustace Schlichting in California, and my mom. So we've got everybody here to see it. Lots more people have been signing in. Thank you everybody for telling us where you are. We see Alexander Sanger. Thanks for signing in, everybody. And please keep us knowing where you're coming from and what you're thinking today. And Gabriela, all these great memories from the University of Michigan, the Words of Music class. And now you yourself are an educator, running your own academy in California. Can you tell us how that moves into this piece? And we're about to hear an excerpt from your work, and I don't know if you want to introduce that or say something after.
Well, I'll say quickly first, at Michigan, I wrote my first large ensemble work with Bolcom. And so this piece still stems from lessons that Bill told me. And I remember, Bill, you won't remember this, I don't think, because it was such an obvious piece of advice, I'm sure for you, that is not memorable, but for me, it was earth-shattering. And I was trying to, because I was afraid of large ensemble. I hadn't written anything that was more than 4 people up to that point. I was afraid to use the full capacity of the orchestra, and I was more comfortable with strings. So I was trying to write a piano concerto and trying to do just piano and strings. And I was hiding behind Shostakovich piano concerto with the strings and 1 trumpet. And I had really boxed myself in, and you told me that I really needed to go into the other instruments. And I was upset. I was mad at you because I knew you were right. I remember going out and then just sort of walking around the pond that I don't know if it's still there at Michigan, just around that pond a few times, trying to burn off excess energy, going, oh my God, how am I going to get this? How am I going to get this done? Because
that damn pond. That's great.
Yeah.
But I never else was there.
But it taught me a really powerful lesson, which is that the music is going to demand what it demands. And so after that, you were the first one to suggest that I look at Latin America, and I went to Venezuela first in '98 to look at the music of a composer you admire, Ramon Delgado Palacios, a bit of a Venezuelan gachak, who was really into joropos and other Venezuelan forms. And of course, you and I have that in common, that we really like looking at, I guess, music of the people, we could call it, and bring it into our own. And then since then, I've written maybe 20, 22, I can't remember now, large ensemble work. So what we're going to hear is hopefully a step up from when I was in the lessons with you. And this is going to be the second movement of a concerto orchestra that I did write for Detroit about.
I heard that in performance.
Yeah. You heard it 2 years ago at Cabrillo when they did that in Santa Cruz. This is the Huaracas movement. And Huaracas means slingshot. And it's meant to be speedy and really virtuoso, really bright in flavor. It's about 5.5 minutes. This performance is a recent one with the Oregon Symphony, a really fine regional Pacific Coast orchestra that I was very privileged to work with. So maybe we could go ahead and bring up this short excerpt, Huaracas from the Walkabout Concerto.
Good.
And there you have it.
It holds together so wonderfully well. I heard it in the premiere, I think, in Detroit. I was there. So, no, it holds up quite well. Ça tient le coup, as we say in French. All right.
Well, it's funny. I think no matter how old one gets or how many signs there are that one is doing okay as a composer, and I have a vibrant life. I'm very fortunate that really these days I don't get nervous that much anymore, about at my premieres, but I still get nervous in front of you, Bill. There's a special kind of love and a special kind of wanting that approval, when you have a teacher that has entered your orbit and had such a big impact like you did with me. And I think part of that impact, again, was not just how you gave me such good counsel in our one-on-one lessons, or I saw how your ethos about music making in a class like Word to Music, but you also brought us to your premieres. I remember hearing your opera with the Chicago Lyric, A View from the Bridge, and we were
6 people.
Yeah.
Can do that. I have a picture of you in front of the poster. There you are, and 5 other people. It was quite a thing. It was. I have to say, I finally had a chance to thank Paul Boylan to have had the foresight to have brought all my little half class, because I was teaching halftime, so I had 6 people, and there you all were. But the fact that they paid for the hotel, they paid, of course, you had to take a train from, to Chicago. That was not a super cost, but you were there and you were wealthy. And also I talked to the lyric people. They opened their arms to you. All of you could go. this was all these. One of the things that Lyric used to do, I don't know how they still do it, but they did it then. And this is what was that? What year was that? I can't even think now. Sometime in the 1990s or something. That was,
Yes, I think it was 99, if I remember correctly.
right. Anyway, but what happened was that what they did is there are a lot of people, at least at that time, who would turn back their tickets if they couldn't make it. There would people would buy a subscription and couldn't actually go there, so they turned back the tickets to the Lyric, which meant that they were essentially donating the cost of that ticket, and they had the right then to give it away. And so Lyric gave you, all of you, chances to go to several operas during the time you were there. And you sat there in what are really in opera companies the ways you want to be. You want to be the front row seats, not too far back from the orchestra. You want to be able to do all kinds of other things you can't do. It's not like a movie. You want to be up close. So there you all were, and you got to see what they were. I took you all around to the whole. Everybody was so welcoming. You got to meet the costume people. You got to meet the stage people. You got to meet everybody, and you saw how much they all were part of this wonderful campaign of this whole opera company, which worked with such a happy atmosphere. Artist Kranick was this marvelous woman who put it all together in such a fantastic, cohesive. I mean, I was so crazy when I met her at National Endowments, and I remember I called home and I said, "Joan, I'm in love." And she's, "Oh dear." She said, "No, I don't mean that kind of way. I'm in love with this person because of what she's doing." And what she did was fantastic. And no, I think we all miss her. What she brought about was a kind of wonderful gazump to the kind of a cohesion which you rarely find. And she was really special. And I was very lucky because 20 years I was involved with that company. And I think it was one of the great lucky things. And so all of you had a little bit of a chance to have what it felt like to be involved with it. And that's really what it's about. You really want to work with people.
Yeah, and again, that was another model, was that as I guess I'm trying to be you, I'm realizing that as things have come my way, it's been a way for me to give back to my academy. So many of my alums are working with the musicians I work with. I'm composer in residence of Philadelphia Orchestra, and I've been able to encourage the orchestra to commission 3 of my composers and give a performance to another. Actually, many of those composers are from Michigan too, I'm just realizing. But it's sort of an ethos to see your teacher. They are trying to galvanize your life, your professional life. And I had a very powerful and charismatic model in you for doing that. I think we should listen to your music now, since we've been talking about, your presence as a influencer and somebody that has really had a deep impact on my life for so long. You are known for your cabaret, you're known for your piano prowess, you're known for your teamwork with the wonderful singer Joan Morris, and you're known for having written music in every single conceivable category. And I think you've always had and I think you've always had your style, your voice, but there's so many different versions of it. And when we talk about what gives a composer a distinctive voice, and yet they're not repeating themselves, you're a model of that. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit now for people that may not know about just your arc, like your life story, where you're from, but then bring us to the Ninth Symphony, because that's the jewel of our talk today, is that we really want to share this work that I think has not received enough performances yet. So, for instance, did you love the orchestra from the time you were basically a young piano prodigy in Seattle? No?
Absolutely. The Seattle Symphony in those days was not a full-fledged orchestra, but it had very interesting people in it, and they somehow managed, despite the fact that there was no real, Milton Katims, who had been a violist for many years and became the conductor there. And he got a lot of flack for a lot of people, but he was actually turned it into a full-fledged orchestra. And that's very important, because when he was able to do this. So I became quite happy with what he had done. He really tried to organize the whole thing together. A lot of people were very unhappy about him because he had some limitations as a conductor. But that's all right. He was not bad. He was very good with new pieces. He was so involved with Toscanini that when he was going to do a premiere of something for the orchestra that had been done by Toscanini, he would sometimes sit down and listen to Toscanini's recording before playing it, which is too bad, because what he did on his own, he premiered my piano concerto with him. Yeah, I did lots of other things with him too. I found him excellent. It's just as many a matter of he had never quite gotten used to the idea of what am I going to do as a. He had been at first. He could have been the heir to William Primrose for viola, and instead he would rather be conductor of the Seattle Symphony, which is considerably lower as far as wattage in the world. So anyway, he had his great problems and he had his great things, and I really had in the end he was very much my friend because I saw what he had done, but it was a very difficult thing to do for him. So I was very thankful for what he had done, and I think what he brought about was something I think very long in history. The Seattle Symphony really grew after him. So anyway, that was that, and I was. What am I? I'm burbling about something. You had a question. Much more.
Yeah. I mean, I was asking from your early days. I guess your first exposure to orchestra music was through the Seattle Symphony, and you have 9 symphonies. And you want to take us through, as you were gigging as a pianist and teaching and writing songs and non-symphonic works. You also had a journey through the symphonies. I'm just wondering. Can you put the Ninth Symphony in context for us, in context of the other works?
Well, the Ninth Symphony, unlike Beethoven's Ninth, it is very short. It's 17 minutes long. It's one big movement with several sections in it. And Derek has very carefully worked out essentially where the basic sections are. And you're going to hear it cut up in 3 pieces, which is fine. But it really was meant to be one big phrase. And you're very kind to have actually. We're going to hear it in 3 portions, enough time for you to go and have a pee in between them. And so that's probably a good idea. I may have to do the same thing myself. So the whole point is it's hard to ask a person to sit down for 17 minutes and really concentrate. So you're going to hear 3 sections of it, one after another. It's very... what did they say here?
Well, Bill, I mean, even if you just want to take us through the first part of it, because that's what we'll hear first. So,
right.
You can add stuff in between.
And Bill, I was thinking that if you want to read a couple of those paragraphs from your program note, because
I'm looking right here.
Yeah, it's the second and third paragraph from the end, I think is what I have in mind. If you want to read those 2 paragraphs, I think that will set it up so beautifully. It really almost took my breath away when I read that, so much in your voice.
Okay, it's the 3rd paragraph. It says, if the Ninth has a subject, if music ever really has one, it would be this. Ours is both a dark and a hopeful time. I needn't enumerate the darknesses and conflicts we suffer. We are living in the middle of an apocalyptic and antipodal war between creation and destruction. Progression and intransigence, which threatens to destroy our world. And that was true back then, and it certainly is right now. But that's everyday news. The hopeful part is that these same forces also hold cold the key to our future if we only strive to understand and embrace them both. William Blake's central message was to deal with the 2 antipodes and realize that they are still part of the same thing. And then learn to break the progression and energy generated by these contraries to work in favor of our planets and our own continuing. And we need to communicate with each other in order to do this. And our biggest problem has been our inability to listen to each other, which seems to worsen with time. At the end, I said, all we hear now is shouting and nobody listening because it didn't so great. The late Judge Churchill, who was our friend, marveled at the plethora of communicating devices we now possess, which provide no real communication. We have every kind of way to communicate, and nobody communicates. Yet there is still a, quote, still small voice that refuses to disappear, though often drowned out. It requires us to listen for it. I pin my hope on that voice. I search for it daily in life and in music, and possibly the Ninth Symphony is a search for the South sound. At least that's what I think people probably want me to read. So that's the way I feel about it. So let's see if it has any effect on you when you hear it.
I think we should go ahead.
Yeah, and then we can break where you have broken, and then if anything you want to see at that point. I gotta go pee.
Go ahead.
Perfect. That's
Wow. We're listening to the this is the American Composers Orchestra Composer to Composer Talks, and we're listening to William Bolcom's Ninth Symphony. We're listening actually to the Rice University Orchestra, for whom it was composed. I believe that the premiere was last year, or 2 years ago now, I have to say.
2012. It was back a bit.
It was. Okay. All right. Okay, great. So 2012. And we just heard what could be called the first movement, but it's not really in movements. It's in one entire long, big
It's a big phrase, and you're right. It's a good place to stop. Bravo. You were the one who figured it out, so there.
Well, I can take credit for something, I guess. But anyway, we have the esteemed composer Gabriela Lena Frank with us. I just pronounced it as a European, in the European style, Frank. But in any case, we are both students of William Bolcom from the University of Michigan, and it's interesting. A question just came in, and I wanted to put this out there because there's a lot of bravos coming in, as there were for Gabriela's Walkabout Concerto. Some of you will see the ties between the two pieces in terms of style and just brilliant orchestration. And one person asked to explain how composers sketch out their compositions prior to writing the notes down. How do you do that, Bill? And then I'm curious to hear Gabriela's reaction to this excerpt that we heard.
I wish I could tell you how my process is. I just get in it and get out of it at the end of it. That's a lot. I mean, it's just what I do. I mean, can you explain it for yourself?
No, but I mean, do you sketch? Do you sketch ideas in a different way than writing down the notes? Like, I think they're wondering how you talk about the arc, the growth, the dynamics, just for yourself. Do you make a little sketch of the piece, or do you just start writing with the notes, or you sketch it out in your head?
I have a kind of sometimes I have an overall kind of sketch I make, but what probably more often happens is that I get into the thing and then it begins to tell me what I need to do with it. I mean, it's like the old thing about the horse and the rider. Sometimes you're the rider, sometimes you're the horse. The idea is you're engaged with it, whichever way you are doing it. So this is probably what happened with me. This is something that it grew in a certain strange way. I was not expecting that. It starts out almost like the famous Bach Passacaglia, but I mean, it was something. It felt like a groundswell, getting bigger and bigger, and so on and so forth. And so this is what I was really after. I began to have been very much involved with, at least for the last 50 years, in the dreadful way we have managed to put ourselves into, we painted ourselves as a culture into a corner, and we can see it doing it every day and so on and so forth. And I saw it happening, and there was nothing I could do about it, but I thought at least I better engage myself with it and let people know somehow emotionally and maybe spiritually what's happening to us. And here we are, and it's already almost, at this point, it's almost too late, because it's to the point as if we are already in the middle of it. And I wish there was that one cannot warn anybody away from what the next move is going to be in life. We have this thing, this dreadful passage we seem to have destined ourselves into doing. And what we need to do is to get through the storm and somehow be sure that we have the rudder right and watch the whole thing and just do our best navigation through the storm, because we have this terrific storm we're in the middle of. I mean, last Wednesday, to watch that horrible melee around the Capitol building and the horrible things that have been fomented by our disgusting president, who has absolutely no right to have ever done any of it, and to the point that it has really divided the country deeply. 1 out of every 6 people in this country has family members they can't talk to anymore because of Trump. And I saw it happening. He knew how to cleave a big divide, or a huge division in our country. And I saw this happening. I've felt this coming in one way or another for many, many, many years. I felt it in my first piano concerto, the second piano concerto too. But I saw this and nobody wanted to hear it. Who wants to hear it? Who wants to find it? But it's there, and we have to deal with it somehow. That's a lot of, maybe if there's any kind of an under subtext to this symphony and much of what I've been doing for the last 50 years, it's just that very thing. My warning about the morass we are putting ourselves into right now, and this is what's part of it. But that's the most kind of superficial end of it. There's something deeper than that, which is going on, and I'm trying to somehow address it with this piece.
No, I think it's really, I think Bill, you know, when I saw that the date was 2012, I think it's March 2012, that was right in the middle of when you wrote this or finished the work. That was the re-election campaign of Obama against Romney, and the energy, we have to remember what the energy was like in the air, and how, what's the word I want, how well you predicted these kinds of forces that were going to be so divisive 8 years later. That this piece could be premiered yesterday for what it's about and the grandeur. And something I admire technically that ties to these really profound things that you're saying is how big, how indisputable these sounds are. And then you go to silence. There's a lot of big sound and big sections playing, and you're not afraid to then just stop the energy and give the audience a moment. It's like when you realize, geez, that really happened. This terrible thing was said, or this terrible thing was done. And I think silence is scary because of how momentous it is, how profound it is. And personally, I like to aspire to profundity in my music, but I don't think I use silence very much in my music. I do think about silence in between movements, but within the music is a
Go back to Ralph Vaughan Williams' last symphony. Or now we say Ralph Vaughan Williams, but you know, his last symphony has these silences. And I suddenly thought, well, you know, there's a lot to be said for that. So I'm afraid I stole that from Rafe. But it's just but you know, it's like it's giving a chance for a person to absorb what they've heard.
Yeah, yeah. And there are natural sections like that in your music. You know, the silence makes it possible to hear the next big thing, and the next big thing, and the next big thing. And so maybe when we hear the second excerpt, those of you out there can listen for that. Listen for how Bill is really creating a lot of theater in that way within the music. To me, it's very operatic. The way you do that is that I can see in that moment is when a director, a theater director, would come in and just quietly change the lights. You know, all of these things are very theatrical in your music, and you're such a big opera composer too. So perhaps we can play the second excerpt and we can listen to these really profound themes that Bill is talking about, the change up, the noise. He's talking about we just can't hear the little voice anymore. We can hear the noise of it, and silence, how that works.
Yeah, and you know, Gabriela, one of actually is our contractor, longtime contractor of ACO, John Taylor. He wrote in. He read the recent article in the New York Times where you discussed your hearing loss as it relates to Beethoven, and mentioned your fear of writing for a big orchestra and how you overcame that. And just interesting to think of in light of this questions about silence and the profundity of silence. And I remember you telling me many years ago that one of the first things you heard was a Bach played by maybe a doctor who was testing out your hearing.
Well, you know, for those of you that don't know, I have a hearing loss, and the first few years of my life, I was largely in silence. It's a low, profound, a high, moderate. The interesting, and then I had this unexpected opportunity to turn in an opinion piece about what it's like to be a composer, and I have perfect pitch, and I had certain feelings about how this must have affected Beethoven's music. But Bach's G major suite, for instance, is in G major, and the first few pieces that I wrote are all in G major as a kid, because it was like a little chick being imprinted by the mama hen. I got imprinted by the sonority of that. It came so early in my life, but yeah, you're right. I mean, I think silence has played a role. I utilize silence when I compose. I'll take out my hearing aids, or I'll practice not hearing the music, and it's its own meaningfulness, whether you're crafting it embedded within a composition that you're putting out in an audience for an audience to enjoy in a concert hall. It's supposed to be about sound. You're supposed to fill it up. And I think young composers can be very afraid to go small or to utilize silence. I don't use a lot of silence in my music the pieces themselves, but certainly behind the scenes I do, whether I want to or not. But why don't we hear this second excerpt so people can...
Good idea. Why not?
Yeah, and it has those big luft pauses in it that I think that's really beautiful thing to listen for, as Gabriela said.
mean, that sounds like a total cliffhanger, that kind of moment. And to me, that's one of the most operatic moments. I just feel like that could be the moment of the kiss in A View from the Bridge, when Eddie and I forget the character other's name, when they have that moment, and I could hear something.
Yes. Rodolfo, and he kisses him. Yeah, that ugly kiss.
That's right. You know, I mean, it's sometimes I'll talk to my composers and I'll say, if you're stuck, just come up with a scene and make it something really gripping, really dramatic, not too nuanced. And if they could do something really big and then nuance it from there, it would sound something like this. And the way the timpanis come in, and you know, the material is actually so concise. You just get so much blood from like one quarter note after another, and it's like the center of the universe. And that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of mastery to be able to pare down all what's not essential. And when you feel like a piece of music, especially an orchestra piece, when you have so many notes to lay in, there's not one unnecessary note, not a single one. That takes real mastery. I don't know. I still continue to feel pride about my teacher. My teacher does well. I'm like, that's my teach right there. That's mine. I worked with him.
There were some great comments. You know, first commenting on the calmness of the opening, but also again, just echoing what Gabriela just said about how concise the material is and not a single wasted note.
Ah.
Well, you know, there's a point when you get old enough, there's just too much. It's such an effort to write every note. It better be, it better count. I mean, I just can't waste time. Time is particularly precious. So this is I mean, the Ninth Symphonies, you know, are huge usually, but this is a very tight 17-minute. What really inspired me, if you know the Seventh Symphony of Sibelius, which to me is the best one, is because he put it all. I mean, there's an awful lot of earlier Sibelius which like warmed over Tchaikovsky, and I prefer my unwarmed over Tchaikovsky. But the Seventh Symphony, just I remember when I was a grad student in Stanford, and I really began to look at it very carefully, and I said, well, okay, fine. First of all, I'm trying to undo myself with the academic total chromatic thing, which is very much at the current style for so many of us. But anyway, but the main was, I love the idea of what Sibelius did, that what BC put is a very, very tight, one connected sort of, it's bigger to my mind than the longer symphonies. And so I thought, I want to make a tight thing as a last time. I want to make sure that I don't waste anybody's time, mine or yours. So that's why it's that's why it's so tight. And I don't know if I ever want to write another symphony. I think I've made for my mind, the last word for me in that area.
Well, this certainly deserves more performances. Should we take a question, or should we just, on that note, move into the third excerpt? What do you want to do, Derek?
Well, there was a question about how in the second section there's such a great balance of seemingly solo voices versus the group in a way that accentuates the ebb and the flow of the piece. And so the question was, when it comes to the process of instrumentation, how do you approach giving an instrument solo attention within the piece in a way that gets your point across and keeps the action moving? That's a question from Hannah.
Well, Hannah, I don't know how I did that. I really have no idea. I mean, maybe the best way to tell it is that the material you work with speaks its own voice. You have to listen to what you're writing, because it's going to talk back to you. And it seemed to have made me do what I did in the situation. I'm not talking about, I'm not saying anti-intellectual, my brain is along with it, all the way through from top to bottom. But of course, the whole point is that I'm not quite sure where I'm doing. It's like a navigator through a storm, and you have to be sure. You have to keep your wits about you, and that's probably how I had to do this, particularly this whole thing. How to keep it moving? It moves because the material shows you how to do it. And you have to listen to it. If you don't have a dialogue with what you're writing, then you won't listen to what the dialogue of what you've written is trying to tell you. You really have to take it. You're not the kind of autocrat. And that's all trouble. You are not an autocrat. You're the one who proposes the thing, and then you have to release it and have to look at what this thing you have released is saying to you. And this is what I had to do with this piece particularly. So that whole thing of those big seconds between, they're one whole bunches and they're against each other in a minor second. One of the most really, really dissonant piece, intervals in music. It's like what we have right now. We have this terrific, absolute ugliness between half of our country and the other half right now. It's really terrible. How can you talk to your relatives who are in love with Trump? So, I mean, it's just, but that's the whole point. It's not because they're in love with Trump. They are angry at us.
I think some people switched the channel just to be here for an hour to not have to deal with that. But
Sorry, but there it is.
But there it is, right? There was another question, which was, and I think I know the answer to this, but when you're composing, do you picture action or lyrics in your head, whether or not you use those images in the final composition?
I don't think I ever did that. It sounds like an interesting idea. I never tried it. I don't think so. No, I think somehow, well, of course, words give me, if I'm setting a piece of word of text sometimes, it will give me wonderful surprises. That's what I love about having a text to set, because it takes you places you may not have gone otherwise. And that's what's wonderful. But I can't say that I've really, again, you have to be kind to the material you've generated. And it's just something you generated that thing, but you have to honor it and let it take you where it wants you to do. So that's one of the things that, yeah, it's a horse and the rider. It's you're collaborating with your material. It's not that you're, I mean, whatever it does, you have to say, okay, fine. Oh, all right. What are the implications of what has come out? And I think that's probably the basic way I've ever composed anyway, is to always have a dialogue with my material.
I mean, the only thing I would add to that, I feel the same way, is sometimes we don't spend enough time working with young composers. What did that mean to listen to the material? That can be a very terrifying prospect to the composer that doesn't have a lot of case studies behind them. They haven't written a lot of music, and you can give some examples. If you listen to the material, then moments that can be cheap, like the whole thing about just dropping in a solo, everybody drop out, now my turn, can be very cheap. And it's often what people do when they can't think of something else to do. But if there's a point to it, like maybe, for instance, you have a dissonant moment and then one person comes out of it and they resolve the dissonance, that feels earned. And you can do something really dramatic, and you may pick a color that we haven't been able to luxuriate in you. So now the music is telling you, I've been in string sound, and now I'm going to be in an oboe sound. And oboe is a classic solo instrument, and partly because you can hear it, it can undulate in many ways, and so it takes practice to be able to listen to the music and let it talk to you. Sometimes you have to put it down for a few days and go back at it with fresh eyes, and you don't have a script. You're just you're almost in a passive but receiving mode. It's like tasting your dish. Okay, it needs salt. It's so obvious. The food told you what it needs. So there's a weighing and balancing that really does translate across the senses. It's not just your taste buds that can do that. Your ears can do it, and your brain sense of pacing can do that also. It's hard to teach. I think one thing you can do is play examples where solos or other things are not done well, and it's so obviously clunky. Then you can ask the young composer, okay, rectify this. Oh, I needed to spend more time, or don't put a solo here. And but you get this kind of mastery and confidence by doing. And for me, by writing some unsuccessful pieces too. You learn just as much from all of those, and orchestration that doesn't work, and material that's not concise, and something that doesn't allow the moment for the audience. So I think we should bring this to a close. This piece of music, everybody wants to know where it's going.
I think so. All right, but you've been left on this cliffhanger, and now we have, I can't say exactly resolution, but it is sort of a resolution. What it really is what can we glean out of all it? I think the last moments of this piece are that little crotal. So it's a little one sound, this little small voice again, and it's all working toward that. So you have just heard the big crux of everybody essentially in, it's like a country right now. Everybody's, and so there you are. So, okay, now we've left it at the cliffhanger. It's like a good ending of a second act. Here comes the third act. The little crotales at the end, you can barely hear them. I'm sorry to say. There should be a little ding, ding, ding at the very end from a crotale. That's all. I'm sorry.
Just like that, you have to listen for it.
I couldn't hear it this time. But
Oh, I did.
well, Joan did. See, but Gabriela, I am going to be one of the group of the deaf. This is increasing, and I'm finding right now. And so I have to get used to that. But, you know, the inner ear never dies. And that's the part that we are operating on anyway. So we just have to do that. Just the old physical machine. We are not made to last forever, you know. So, and here I am at 82, coming on to 83. And I think I've been very lucky. But I also realize that, you know, it's not forever. Okay, fine. I'm very philosophical about that. But I guess the whole point about this speech was, how do we deal with this dreadful life that we have made ourselves over? Maybe the best thing to do is to accept it all and work it from there. I don't know. I can't find the right way. But that's the way I felt anyway.
But yet, you know, I hear hope. I mean, there's some daunting, awfulness, you know, challenges that have been going on here in California. We've been fighting wildfire. I mean, last year with the grimmest year yet.
The edge of fires. Yeah. I worry about you guys. I really do.
You know, and what you do is you do the best you can to protect yourself, and you change your plan, and you silence has been important for me to just step back, take an aerial view of my life, and to see what do I need to do, but also what music is necessary for me to write. If I'm going to choose stolen time and precious time to put into music, what are the stories that need to be told? And it's another reason why this symphony is so moving to me, and I think is necessary for us to play, is that it's one of those works that's you can hear again and again and again, regardless of what age that we're in, what era of challenges that we're going through. And in spite of that, I hear you from the 90s when I got to know you. I hear you from the early 2000s. I hear you from 2010s. I hear you today from it. And I'm going to get emotional here, but you're my teacher.
Well, you're my pupil. I'm very proud of you. I really am. Both of you guys. You have really made such a real, you've done it on your own, and you've taken your own way, and you've dug your own path, which is what you have to do. And if you don't do that, who is it going to do for you? So no, I'm very proud of you both. I'm so glad to see you there, and this is I'm really quite moved by that. And so thank you for all of this. I just want to, first of all, if anybody wants to take this recorded, and all they got to do is cut out all the palaver in between, and the piece is all there. You saved the whole thing. Derek really did that.
Well, I was going to say that the whole piece is available for everybody to listen to on the links that you have. You can listen. For some of them, I've already listened. I'm sure my mom has already listened. Right, Mom? So, but everybody. Everybody can listen for quite a while. They'll be up there for at least a week, I think. So, so definitely tune in to hear the whole piece and to hear Gabriela's whole piece. You know, there's been so many great questions that people have asked. You know, people have referred to Stravinsky Requiem Canticles, different pieces, which I know, Bill, Stravinsky is very important to you. In Gabriela, in your piece, there was a question about wind ensemble, whether you worked for wind ensemble. But and many of these folks know many of your works, both of you as composers. And I was going to say, you know, there was an interesting question from Stacy Garrop, who was also a student of yours, Bill, who said, who asked how have each of your composer activities changed during the pandemic, writing or otherwise, and what did you originally have planned for this time period, and what did you end up doing? And I heard that disembodied voice at your house, Bill, which is the great Joan Morris, who's your longtime collaborator and partner in life. So hi, Joan. We see your hands there. But to the point about the pandemic, which has, you know, just been so overarching, can you talk a little bit about that and how it's affected your writing?
Well, first of all, hello, Stacy. How are you, darling? It's so good to look at your face. So she was studying with me a short time, but I'm so glad that she's doing extremely well. I'm very proud of all of you guys, and it's wonderful to see that you're all going on your own ways. There is no effort of trying to be certain doctrine. You are doing what you want to do. She's doing what she wants to do. He's doing what they want to do, rather than all following some sort of a doctrine, which I had never ever have wanted to oppose on anyone. What do you do at a time like this? I think of Cervantes, who wrote Don Quixote in prison, and he took the pin of being in prison as a kind of a quiet time where he could actually write Don Quixote. And maybe this we had to do this time. I got some amount of it writing when starting in 2018. It was already clearly that awful ugliness going on right now, and at that point already there was, and it just intensified and went further. And then when it all really absolutely got, pandemic and sequestered and all the rest of it, how am I going to deal with this in some kind of a sane way? Well, I did write some. I finished up the piano concerto, which I was writing for Igor Levit, which is going to be theoretically going to be done in April 2022 at Heidelberg. I hope by that time I'll be allowed to take a plane and go and hear it. If not, I probably have to hear it on Zoom or something. We'll see what happens if it gets done. Igor Levit, very hot. He's 50 years younger than I am, and he's all over the place right now. So I wrote it for him because he wanted to have it. And the Mahler Chamber Orchestra, which is out of Heidelberg, is really a marvelous virtuoso chamber orchestra. So I'm very excited about that, but I hope to be able to hear it, and I hope I'll be able to be there in Heidelberg. If not, we'll see what happens. A lot of people never got to hear Schubert never got to hear his big Ninth Symphony, and that's one of the great pieces, but we got to hear it. And so that's the whole point. I suppose it's just, you do what you do, and this is what so I feel I've said something, I've made a statement, and now what are we going to do next? I'll find out. I mean, at the moment, I'm having a wonderful quiet period. What I've done already, the big piano concerto for Igor, I also did a sonata really for my two old wonderful friends, Norm and Jeannie Fisher at Rice. And Norm was actually the cellist in the Concord Quartet, which I wrote my ninth quartet for them, and so on. So I've known these people. The Fisher families is extraordinary bunch. They've done so many things in so many areas. They're so amazing. So I just did it because I didn't have any money for it. Nobody gave me any money. I said, I want to give this to you guys because I've always liked what you did. So there we are. So I did that. I wrote a sonata, which was originally going to be for Igor, but then it turned out that the commissioner said, I want a concerto instead. Okay, fine. So I started the piece anyway. It will now be premiered by Marc-Andre Hamelin and Marc-Andre Orla, and also Dennis Russell Davies, two of the wonderful people who have played my things. Dennis has, of course, premiered every one of my big operas and Songs of Innocence, and Marc-Andre Hamelin did my 12 New Etudes in the first performances and got me the Pulitzer, so I have no objections. They're both people who I feel totally will do what they can with the piece. So I really, my cup runneth over. I have everything going. I'm down in the process of trying to figure out what am I going to do now, and I'll find out. I'm supposed to be doing a concerto for this excellent chamber orchestra out of Houston called Rocco, and her name is lawyer.
Alicia Lawyer.
Alicia Lawyer. I love the idea that I'm working for a lawyer instead of working against a lawyer per change. And so that was supposed to be done in 2023. But it'll be coming out of a whole period of which I did some writing. I've done a bunch of things, and that's fine. And now I have a little quiet time, and I'm going to have I've been reading. I haven't decided, and I don't want to take a vacation. We don't listen to any music at home practically. Joan and I work on this little thing we're going to be doing in February, the 10th of her birthday, her 21st birthday. Finally, we're just spending it a little later, and so this will be a piece. We're going to do this whole concert put together of songs that we've worked on over the years and some more recent ones.
Yep.
But that's what we're doing right now. Here he is. Come in here.
Oh, let's see. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna move here so you can just see my darling wave. She's sitting here looking.
Yeah, for my birthday, I always say, I'm approaching 29. I just won't say from which direction.
So you have two white-haired people sitting right in front of you. My God! So a couple of oldsters. I don't know which paintings I was. You know, we're so old. Anyway, no, I no. How nice to see Stacey's face. I'm so glad that she got it. I hope I answered your question there. I don't know. Anyway, it's wonderful to see everybody do this. Well, you know, they're working and being seen and heard, and despite this, maybe we're not talking about being enormous, huge, world-shattering, you know, the kind of Taylor Swift or not. You know, there's no numbers of people that we're going to be dealing with, but you do it because you want to do it, and it's there, and you hope this be down, and maybe somebody will find it useful. So that's what you do. I just did it because I want to do it. So here we are.
Gabriela, what have you been doing during this time?
You know, it's the great dilemma I have is that at heart I'm a homebody. For many years I was you know, on the road a lot. I was on the road a lot, and that included going to Peru, you know, to see my mom's family and to take in my cultural experiences there. So last year I was supposed to be on the road a lot. And of course, everything was canceled, big recording sessions and whatnot. And we went through some difficult challenges here with the fire. And so a lot of it's just been homekeeping. But I got into my forest more, which I think is a regenerative activity for me as a composer. And we've been foraging a lot for mushrooms, and we've just gathered all the acorns that I turned into meal, and I'm going to make into like tamales and cakes and spend more time with our chickens. So I did, you know, the academy that I founded took a lot of work, and I've been fundraising for that, more focused on getting my composers work. That I'm doing all right. You know, I managed to get through these losses, and but the emerging classes of composers really need our help. And so my focus was largely on that. And then I had one unexpected premiere with LA Opera, my first digital premiere, my first digital project of any kind. I've been so mostly acoustic based. And it's one of the highlights of my life, something that was extremely unexpected. You never know. You never know when a deeply rewarding experience is going to come your way. It may not be something that you specifically navigated. And it was a rearrangement of something I had written somewhat quickly and not a large project a few years ago. But something drew me to that project. So I just was reinforcing certain lessons to myself, values, the kind of lifestyle I want to have, and even taking on project that may not be necessarily prestigious. This was with a community choir that flowered into something years later that was paired with a flamenco dancer and a great videographer and great lighting with a great company, LA Opera. And so it's been a time of being more receptive and not assigning myself things to do. It's just reacting to, kind of like reacting to your music, like what does it want? And so 2020 told me what I needed to give it. In 2021, I might be a little more in there trying to get certain things going, but you know, we're going to be in this for a while. And I think connection like this series is amazing, that these will be the silver linings, that these are activities that we can take forward with us when the pandemic eases.
Yeah, well, we're so happy that the Yale oral archives at Yale, which is the OHAM, that they are going to be archiving this talk, as well as all the other composer-to-composer talks that we've been doing, including the next one, which is on January 27th with John Corliano and Mason Bates, where they'll be discussing some of their works, and I know those are colleagues of us all. Gabby and Bill, I can't thank you enough for sharing your music, and also just letting everybody hear something about your relationship, both musically and personally, to just humanize what it is that you do. And, you know, we're just in such a crazy time. You know, we've got a raging pandemic and impeachment and you know, environmental disaster all happening at the same time. And Bill, maybe this piece of yours is a premonition of all this, but I really want to thank you all for sharing, both of you for sharing your thoughts, and our audience for sharing all their thoughts and feelings, and we are a community, and thank you so much for reinforcing that today. It's so important, and thank you for all the work that both of you have done to bring comfort and mentorship to the next generation of composers. It's so important, and obviously at ACO we care a lot about that. So thank you both. Thank you to everybody out there. So many wonderful composers and supporters and listeners of new music. And lots of love to you both, and I hope to see you both soon in person.
I know, and not over just this. I want to actually have a chance to, you know, see you in the same room and not worry about masks. I hate those masks, but then we have to have them, and everybody's got to do it. But every time I put it on as a trial, and so I'm sure we all have the same thing. But we'll get through this somehow. But we'll see what the how is when we get to it. And meantime, I don't know. It's a lot of what's good about it is it's made us examine pretty much everything we've been doing up to now, which is high time, I think. So, with my blessing and your blessing, let's thank for those people who have listened to this whole thing. And I send you both lots of love to two of my very favorite students. And Joan sings.
Me too.
And okay.
To you both.
I feel as if somehow, I feel very gratified. And thank you so much for doing all this. And
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
well, anytime. All right.
Okay, see you all soon, and don't forget to join us, all the listeners. Thanks for being with us, and join us on January 27th when we talk with John Corleano and Mason Bates.
Give highs to John is one of my closest friends, you know, so that's great. And also Mason Bates, I got to know when I was in we were all together in Rome at the same time. Very talented guy. So terrific, and hi from me, from both, and we'll see each other sometime. I hope in the flesh, rather than just in this virtual way, which is better than nothing. I'll say. Thanks for that.